Jesus set the bar high when it comes to worship. He didn't give us a low bar. He gave us a high bar. And he did it when he was asked, where should we worship? Where should we go to worship? Where is the right place to worship? And the question had a lot of little things in it. It wasn't just where. If you look at the question this lady asked Jesus, this was the woman at the well, and when she asked Jesus, it wasn't just a where in her question, it was also a how. Okay? By asking where do you go to worship, she was asking him, so what is worship then? How do you do it right? Was her question. And Jesus gave her this answer in John 4:23 through 24. He said, yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshiper will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must, not may or should or could, must worship in spirit and in truth. That's the high bar. What's the opposite of worshiping God in spirit and in truth? We have, in our modern English, we have a perfect saying for it. It's called going through the motions. That's the opposite of worshiping in spirit and truth. Going through the motion. When we just go through the motions of worship, then we're not worshiping in spirit and truth. This was something I struggled with when I first became a believer. I've told the story many times that I accepted Christ in my heart and started a relationship with Jesus out at sea in the Navy. And it was several months before I had an opportunity to go to church. Now, I had been to church as a child, and I knew what church was about, but I had not actually gone to church as a believer in Jesus Christ. And so one of our first port of calls that the ship made after I became a Christian was Honolulu, Hawaii. And so we got there, and I was off for a Sunday, and I decided, all right, I want to experience church. I want to experience all the aspects of it from now a believer's viewpoint. And so I did a search in the Yellow Pages. By the way, for those of you who don't know what that is, okay, Yellow Pages was the Google of old. And, it was a book that had all the businesses and everything in it. But anyway, so I Yellow Paged it, okay, found myself a church in, by the way, just to date myself, this was 1978. So I looked it up. I found it I was looking for an evangelical church. I wasn't Catholic. I wanted something kind of mainstream. I wanted something. So I found a church that sounded like it would be there. I went to it, and to be honest with you, I was confused, okay? They started with a time of worship. And so people took out this book, and they opened it, and they started singing. And so, of course, I took the book and opened it and started singing. I didn't want to be out of place, I didn't want people to know this was my first time at church. I just wanted to blend in. And so, here I am with this hymnal open, reading something I totally didn't understand. And this church was kind of doing it in a Hawaiian-type theme, and that confused me even more. And but I went through the motion of worship. I sang the songs along with the people. I had no idea what I was doing. Didn't do really anything for me except, I wasn't a very good singer, and so, it was just got through it. I went through the motions, I got through it. And then, got to the message, and the message I really found interesting because I was eager to learn, and so that was great. And then, but that worship part, it really kind of, I didn't understand it. And for years, I struggled with this worship part. Now, by this time, I'm married. A few years down the road, I'm married. We're going to a church, where there's worship, like we just did. And, I'm still going through the motions of this 20, 25 minutes when Yolanda's leading 35 minutes. And I'm going through the motions of worship. But I'm still confused. I'm still confused about what it really is, what it really means. So, turns out that there's a pastor, it was actually a chaplain, that noticed there was a group of us that really struggled with this worship time. And so he did something unique. He rented a retreat in Washington. He rented this mansion, was run by a Christian retreat company, and took this group, I would say, I can't really remember, but maybe 15, 20 of us, guys off the ship. I was still on the ship in the Navy. And he took us to this mansion and to teach us about worship. And he brought this certain kind of music and little different styles of music. And the one thing neat about this mansion is they had recreated an upper room and on a top room in the mansion. They had furnished it like they would have thought the Last Supper room would look like, long table and thing. And anyway, this pastor took us there, and he took this group there, and he associated music and how to use music to worship. And we all, back then, we had what's called Walkmans. Some of you may not know what that is, but we had tape recorders with big headphones, and he kind of had us each find the style of music that spoke to us, and he sent us out into the woods to listen to this and to seek God. And the short story is that, at least for myself, that was the first time I experienced worship in spirit and in truth. Because that was the first time through the singing and music that I was led to the feet of Jesus, so to speak. And it was definitely an experience with God. It brought me to an experience with God. I heard from God. I spoke to God. My relationship flourished, and I learned worship. Now, the interesting thing with that is I kind of pursued worship for several years after that. I pursued that time. I tried to get back to that. Okay? It was kind of like I came back to church. Now I knew how to use worship time at the church, how to use it to connect with God, and also my personal time. I've learned how to use music to connect with God and to worship Him. But I started to seek after different types of music that would take me to that place that I was on that retreat. And so I went through, trying, I even tried Gregorian chants, believe it or not, okay, for a while, because that was something I found, wow, that kind of took me to a place, again, and the mistake I made was I started connecting I started seeking the music rather than seeking God, okay? And so this pastor and the chaplain who had taught us at the retreat spent more time teaching us. And some of what he taught, I'm going to teach you this morning. Someone had said that when we pray, okay, when we pray, we're seeking after our own needs. And we're concentrating on our own needs. When we praise, we're seeking or are preoccupied with our blessings, you know. But when we truly worship, we're seeking and being preoccupied with God. See, my mistake was I tied worship. Music is an integral and important part of worship. As one of the only art forms given to humanity that engages the trinity of our created being, body, soul, and spirit, music is a wonderful tool for worship. You see, you've all heard about the Trinity of God, right? Father, Son, and Spirit. Well, guess what? We also are a trinity of body, soul, and spirit. Hey, God created us in His image. Doesn't it make sense that if He created us in His image, He would also create us in the character that He is? And He is a triune being, so He made us as a triune being. Music moves all three parts of our being. Music connects to our body, music connects to our soul, and music connects to our spirit. Music moves our bodies. It inspires us to move. You know, have you ever there's a song that comes on and you can't help it. You're moving. Okay, it inspires us to move. It's used to dance. It quickens or slows the rhythm of our heart. Our bodies were made to be musical. We were created to be musical. That's why music affects and engages our bodies. Music moves our soul. Have you ever had a piece of music that made you weep? I think all of us have. Have you ever heard a song that brought you joy? Even if you were in the doldrums, you heard a piece of music and it cheered you up, made you smile. Music affects your soul. It affects your emotions and your mind. It inspires pictures and thoughts and feelings. Music brings forth feelings, yet it literally can transport us to places. It can communicate a full range of emotions without a single word. Music is a powerful antenna of the soul. If you don't believe me, watch a tense movie, okay? And then turn off the music. Turn off the sound. And watch an intense action scene without any sound or music. You'd be bored to tears. Because, ugh, what's that? Music is an integral part. The movie industry knows this. They know how to move us emotionally within a movie. But music also moves us in our spirit. It always has. Do you remember when Saul was tormented by the Spirit? What did he do to calm his own spirit? David played him music. And so it was wherever the Spirit of God was upon Saul that David would take a harp and play it with his hands. Then Saul would become refreshed and well, and a depressing spirit would depart from him. David knew how to use music in his life to not just for his own spirit, but those around him. See, our spirits were created to respond to music. What an amazing tool. You see, music is a vehicle to worship. Could we have a worship time without music? Of course. Vehicles come in all kinds of forms, don't they? You have cars, buses, trains, and so does vehicles to worship. As I mentioned before, silence can be a vehicle to worship. Testimonies can be a vehicle to worship. Praise in itself is a vehicle to worship. But as I mentioned, music is a unique vehicle. It connects us to God in a unique way, body, soul, and spirit.